Hello, bonjour, I'm Theo, and welcome to the Lucky Bear Lodge. Come on in, and I'll give you a tour. The dimensions of this tiny home are 30 feet long by 8.5 feet wide. If I recall, about 14 feet, which is the legal height limit for roads. When I was designing this tiny home, I had three main components I knew I had to have. One was I needed a C-shaped kitchen, which meant the kitchen had to be on one end or the other. Second thing I knew I needed was a kitchen counter that could rotate out of place so that I could host larger gatherings. And lastly, I knew I needed a bathtub, so that basically determined the length and size of the bathroom. So welcome to the kitchen in my tiny house. This is towards the front of the trailer. The ceiling is about 6'2", 6'4" feet high, just so I can fit some of my taller friends in here because I'm rather short. It is a C-shaped kitchen. This was one of my requirements. The reason is efficiency. I wanted to be able to get something from my fridge, place it next to the counter, wash it off in the sink, and then bring it over to the cutting board, process it, get it on to my induction stove, cook it, and then plate it over here and send it on to the dining area. I wanted a nice flow to the kitchen, and I also made sure that these counters were not 2 feet deep, because what I learned in the building process is a lot of furniture is really standardized, more than we like to think. I really don't see the need for having 2 feet deep counters, so I actually made these only 22 inches deep, and those extra 4 inches do actually help to make this feel like a much larger space here in the middle. I think it works out quite well. In addition, I had to have my tea, spice, and other ingredients rack. A lot of these are ingredients I harvest either from my garden or from the wilds, and I love this little tea corner where I can just prep all of the delicious drinks that I can make. I also made sure to place a ton of storage, and again, efficiency. Tupperwares are here at the end where the food would be already processed, so if I'm packing lunches or whatnot. Plus I've got all my snacks and chips in there, so I don't have to go deeper into the kitchen when I don't need to. This pull-out semi-pantry is where I keep all my spices, cooking oils, and other processing tools. And in the far ends, I've got a bunch of glasses, bottles, and cooking pot storage, as well as food storage down at this end, plus, of course, all my garbage and compost down at the far end. This sink was actually pretty heavily discounted at Habitat for Humanity, and I was just like, it's a big sink, it's beautiful, it's mine now. For the various appliances, I got pretty much everything I felt like I needed. I discounted a dishwasher. I feel like I'm fine washing dishes by hand, but there is still some space in this area below the stove where I could fit one of those smaller dishwashers if needs be. I wanted an induction stove. I was hoping to get more than 2 burners, but 2 is more than enough. And man, do I love induction stoves. After I introduced this thing into the home, it really all clicked because it's really efficient with how fast it can heat up food. It doesn't produce excess heat, so it doesn't get hot in here, especially during the summer. And there's very little risk of a fire because there's no open flame. So I love it for those reasons. For an oven, again, I could have gone with a larger oven unit, but I actually found one of these much cheaper convection oven units, and it's had all my needs covered. I can toast bread in there, I can even fry up some bacon, and I've even been able to bake full casseroles and pies in here, so it's really been more than enough for what I need. I got this microwave for a reasonable price at Home Depot. It was the only microwave there that didn't have any sort of Wi-Fi capabilities, which I wanted, because why do you need Wi-Fi capabilities in a microwave? I did make one small mistake with it though. I'm a really short person, so I can't actually see how good and ready the food is when I place it in there, but I could still reach up. So that works reasonably well. The fridge is actually Galant's kind of one of these retro style fridges. This was just something I knew I wanted. Luckily enough, when I was looking for one of these, someone had the exact height requirement to fit under my stairs. And I got it in the color I wanted. So when I got the red fridge, I had to pair it up with the red kettle that also looks cool because it's got an actual temperature gauge on the side of it. I don't think there's really anything I would change to the kitchen other than making this area behind the fridge just a little bit more organized and structured. This is kind of just like a small cubby of no man's land. But otherwise, I think my kitchen's great. I love that I was able to put the T-rack in there and make it feel a little bit more, as they say, cottage core from my gamer terminology. But yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted out of the kitchen, is great cooking and good ingredients mixing. I consider it an extension of the kitchen, but this is basically the breakfast bar, but also the dining room table. We can move this breakfast bar up and down the large picture frame window to be seated right in front of all the beautiful flower fields in front of us and to take in nature any time of day, really. But we can also pull it out into the center of our entrance area and turn it into our dining room table. And I've tried it out before, and it's a little bit tight with the elbows, but we can fit 6 people all around the table, so that is fantastic. And of course, the other nice thing about being able to move it is if we need a lot of space in the center of the home, if you're doing a workout or whatever, you can shove this whole thing right down the center of the kitchen, tuck it away, and you'll have far more space here. So the aesthetic for my place that I chose is definitely what a lot of people might consider that cottagecore aesthetic, but I like to think more of it as kind of the older Eastern Canadian kind of log cabin style of build. That's the same reason I picked the wooden sidings for all of the walls throughout the house. That's the same reason I got the rock backdrop for the stove. It's the same reason I hang old rusty metal, steel, iron tools that I find laying around in decent shape. That's the look I was going for. So the flooring is kind of special in a couple of ways. One, it didn't cost me any money, so that was nice. But more importantly, my grandfather, and I didn't know this until I started building the house, but my grandfather, he's from the Philippines, he's from Manila, and over there, he used to actually work and run a factory that produced these n-parquet pillets, or little wooden rectangles. It's a type of hardwood in the Philippines. It's pretty popular, especially in more traditional architecture over there. It's a really cool floor. There's a lot of really interesting things you could just see in the wood grain or the imperfections or whatnot. When I had access to a couple of bags worth of this hardwood, I knew I had to have this in the tiny house. So for anyone who's ever played the Halo series of video games, I kind of wanted that effect that you have playing the game of seeing the Halo ring all around you in the skybox. So I did that, but in reverse. So I structured all of the windows from the door window to the 2 skylights to the large picture window to have this ring of light and a skybox basically around the house with those windows. And when you pull the breakfast bar out into its dining table setup, everyone gets the sun coming straight down from above them. And I think that's a really cool effect. It also helps that these skylights actually also pop open and give a great cross breeze to this place when it's getting really warm. This is the living room and gaming area, and it lives up to exactly what its name is. I can also move these monitors around since they are on arms, so if I want a more cinematic or theatrical experience, I can do just that. And of course, we got the couch back here, custom designed by yours truly, and it's got a couple of different configurations based on what the needs are. So it can be a couch. It can also be a series of different stools or chairs if people want to place it around the fireplace or anywhere else in the house. It can be a day bed. It can be like a diner kind of booth setup. It works really well in tandem with a bunch of the things from the PC desk side of things. Of course, the PC desk also acts as office space, document storage, that kind of thing. With the whole theme of efficiency with this house, I had to be pretty flexible with the desk design. I actually originally had a C-shaped desk that wrapped around the computer chair, but I found that actually took up too much space, and those big protruding ends of the C cut into the living room walkway a little bit too much. So this year I rearranged it into more of a trapezoid shape. I have a YouTube gaming channel, but I also do editing work for both my tiny home builder and for my ecological restoration job. So it was really important to be able to have internet access, have access to both my monitors. It makes editing a lot easier, and to be able to continue gaming and editing in this place, and I didn't have to sacrifice anything. I went to tiny living because for my lifestyle and my ethics, it made the most sense. I work in ecology, so living in a big home, taking up more space that could be used for a garden just didn't make any sense to me. So smaller footprint, larger garden, more space for animals. And I even try to incorporate that into the home design itself. I discovered tiny living through, funny enough, I was living in a small research cabin in Creston at the time for work. And while I was there, I stumbled upon several YouTube channels specializing in tiny homes. So it seemed a very appropriate location to start learning about them. I decided that's what I wanted to do, and I just started looking locally. The big deciding factor for me was I went to a home and garden show at one of the local trade expos, and they had a series of tiny homes from a bunch of different sellers. So I got to actually look and compare between the sellers, and although everyone had some good stuff, what drew me to ethical tiny homes the most was they were about as costly as any of the other tiny homes that were there, but they let you customize the entire thing. I knew I wanted to live in something that was a little bit more unique rather than manufactured. Nothing wrong with the manufactured stuff, but I needed some personal touches on mine. So essentially, I hired out Ethical Tiny Homes to build the homes. They've built 20 some odd tiny homes at this point. So I knew I wanted them working on it, but I was off work at the time. I usually don't work in the wintertime because that's when all the plants are asleep and or dead. So it was actually really nice to be able to go up to them and say, hey, I've got some free time. Can I just spend it here building the house with you guys and actually learn the process? So yeah, they let me in and let me take part in every step of the process. I avoided doing electrical or plumbing because I didn't want to screw that up. But yeah, I had a hand in pretty much everything else. Definitely the single largest cost for the tiny home was the trailer itself. I bought a brand new one. I wanted to make sure it was structurally sound. That was around 18 grand Canadian. And then after that, all of the other costs combined, this house is in and around 100 grand total. That's with all of the appliances minus my PC, because that's a special case. The process of finding a place to park the tiny house was actually easily the hardest part of the entire process. It was months and months of searching on Facebook Marketplace. I even went to the extent of handing out a few flyers in people's mailboxes and stuff like that. I had a few maybe offers for a time until I found this spot, and then this spot seemed like the right deal. They wanted someone who's gonna live here long term. They had reasonable rent for the area, and they offered me a big patch to plant and live on. In terms of tiny home parking options around here, renting out on people's farms, working as secondary farm hands, that kind of thing, is really the big one around here. There are other places in the province where they do have tiny home communities, but those are typically small communities or communities that have had some issues with, population decline and this kind of thing. In those places it works. I'm waiting for larger adoption. There's some places on Vancouver Island that are very friendly for tiny homes, some places not so much. So it really is a mixed bag, and I'd like for there to be a bit more legislation to make them a bit more official. I don't know about this area specifically, but anywhere closer to the center of town, the rent for this place is easily half of what you'd pay for an apartment in the town. Of course, you do lose a little bit of the convenience of being closer to town, so you are paying for those amenities, but otherwise, yeah, it's definitely more affordable if you're willing and able to drive. Welcome to the bathroom in the tiny house. This is at the back end of the tiny house, of course. Largely, this layout was based on the bathtub. I needed somewhere to put that. I didn't want it strewn kind of weirdly across the center and right below the window. So I placed it on this side such that I can look outside the window if I'm taking a bath and listen to the birds and bees and whatnot. And of course, no bathtub is complete without a little tray that I can put a book or my phone on while I have my bath. Shower curtains around the whole bathtub so I can have a shower with, honestly, one of the best shower heads I've ever had. It's magnetic, has lots of really good settings, including a mist setting. So if you're here in the wintertime, it's cold, get that warm mist on you, it feels like you're in the tropics. And if it's the summertime and it's really hot, you put that cold mist on you and it feels like you're in fresh mountain air. It's the best. I've got people have described as a small vanity and a small sink, and fair enough, I might change that one day. But I've got pretty much all the storage for my items I need underneath. And then I've also got the hot water tank in this cupboard here so that I can have my hot water for my baths and showers. And then I've also got my washer dryer combo here. Can't do the largest loads when it comes to laundry, but it's basically what I need. And if I need to run 2 loads in a week, that's fine. And then I've got a small closet here for more formal things. I keep that in the cupboard that I totally scavenged off the beach one day because this piece of wood looked kind of cool. And you might have noticed this odd mirror with a sliding barn door contraption on it, and that's because, yes, the mirror does slide over top of the bathroom window. I desperately wanted some exposed wheels somewhere in my house for a sliding door. I didn't want to do it on the bathroom door because that would lower the head height, and some of my taller friends might have trouble ducking underneath the bathroom door. So I put it on the mirror instead as kind of an experimental feature. I think it actually worked out quite well. I decided to go with the composting toilet because it seemed easier at the time, and I was really curious about trying it out. It's not for everyone, I'll say that much. It is a little tougher to clean out and change out than I had anticipated. It's nothing I can't deal with, but I think in the future, what I might do is I might drill a hole in the floor for a composting toilet where its bin is kept on the exterior of the house rather than on the inside. Still though, it gets the job done, and I mean, really, what more can you ask for with a toilet? Welcome to the upstairs master loft. I got a nice queen-size bed here. It's got enough space for basically everything you need in the loft. I got my closet cubes over there for basically all of my clothing. I've got a bunch more storage on this side, which I'm gonna build a more appropriate storage for both of these at some point, but that's of a lesser concern at the moment. I think the only other major features of this are the opening windows on either side for a nice cross breeze, and that is a lifesaver. I cannot sleep if I'm too hot, and this place, heat wave comes by, I open both windows, and I wake up and I'm a little bit cold even. And then the other big feature is what my dad likes to lovingly call the surfboard, and this is a piece of wood with actually some iron fittings on the end of it that I found in the Fraser River not too far from here. What that allows me to do is also take this loft area and convert it into a sitting area, a reading area, or extra seating for if we're all playing board games around the table. Living on the coast here in Canada, it's a little less harsh, but we do still have to deal with winter. Every winter, out here, we usually get a week or two where everything is just covered in snow. So for climate control, I've got the heat pump that goes hot or cold. It's right over the door, so it kind of fills up the middle of the room first and then filters out into the lofts. The other option I have is I do have a wood burning stove. I mainly got it for aesthetics, but it is also good in emergency situations if it is cold outside and the power goes out or something like that and I still need heat or to cook some basic meals. Insulation, we used foam insulation that was rated at R30, so it's pretty good insulation. I can definitely feel a delayed effect when it gets really hot outside, and it still takes an hour or two for this place to heat up. And same goes for the winter time where it gets really cold and it still retains heat pretty well. So yeah, overall, I think the bedroom's really comfortable. It's nice that I can actually sit up on this bed without having to hit my head. I do realize a lot of people might consider it a crime for tiny houses not putting the skylights up here, but I could still see the stars outside of these windows just fine, though that extra head space would have been kind of nice. But otherwise, I like it a lot. Welcome to the secondary loft, or as we've nicknamed it, the nest. This is basically where I shove some extra storage or some extra friends if they're sleeping over. These cool kind of floor seats that I picked up actually do fold down, so if anyone's ever staying up here, I can fold these into a single piece and use that as the bed. The other thing I love to do when I'm up here when they're around is to do some bird watching and maybe some bat watching if everything goes well, because I've actually attached a small bat box outside of this window. I'm gonna see if this summer I get some bats living inside of it. It should be the right type of environment for them, but it's never a guarantee. And then this spring, I did have a chance to look at a pair of chickadees, have a full clutch of baby chickadees, 4 of them, and they hatched just last week actually. So that was really fun to watch and record some footage. So I'm definitely gonna be making a video about that on my channel at some point. All right, guys, well, thank you for checking out the Lucky Bear Lodge. You're welcome back anytime. If you'd like to check out my gaming stuff on YouTube for Foxhole and other games, you're welcome to come over to I Saw a Bear on YouTube. Or if you'd rather check out the ecology work that I do, you're welcome to check out Eco Ecological. And if you'd prefer to see the making of this tiny home, I'm doing a 4-part documentary over on Ethical Tiny Homes channel. So you're welcome anytime. See you guys.